Welcome to In Focus with Ken Clough Photography, the podcast where we explore the art, craft, and heart behind the lens. I'm Ken Clough, and I'm so glad you're joining me here today. Whether you're a fellow photographer, an artist of another kind, a bride-to-be, or just someone who loves seeing creativity unfold, today's episode is especially for you. We're talking about the full arc of the creative process, from vision to frame. That journey from the moment an idea pops into your mind to the moment you click the shutter and know you've captured something special. And to ground this in something real, I'm going to walk you through the recent Boho Cowgirl series I photographed, which was just published in Blush Fashion magazine. This shoot started with a loose country theme, something vague and dreamy, and through a combination of storyboarding, scouting, styling, and spontaneous creativity, it transformed into a cohesive, published visual story. And here's the most important part. What I learned from this process directly informs the way I approach weddings, engagements, and every real-life story I'm honored to photograph. So let's dive in, from vision to frame. Where creativity begins, the spark of an idea. Every creative journey begins with the spark. Sometimes it's a word, a color palette, a memory, or even a song. For Boho Cowgirl, it was a feeling. I had this image in my mind of a woman in a long flowing dress, walking through a field of tall grass, sun dripping through the trees, cowboy boots in one hand, and wind in her hair. It was cinematic, wild, and soulful. The concept wasn't fully formed. It wasn't about fashion yet. It wasn't about publication or locations. It was just a feeling. That, for me, is how a lot of creative work starts. Emotional first, technical later. As the idea simmered, I started fleshing out what this visual language might include. Elements like fringe, lace, worn leather, natural light, open space, and a warm, earthy color palette. I kept thinking about contrasts, grit and grace, wild and elegant. This is where storyboarding comes in. I'm a huge believer in collecting ideas visually. I'll pull reference photos, sketch layouts, or even make a playlist that captures the vibe I'm going for. For this shoot, I saved images of vintage Western fashion, textures like cracked earth and dry grass, and high-fashion editorial shots with a rustic twist. This process helps me think through the visual consistency and emotional tone of a shoot. And it's the same foundation I use when working with couples on their wedding photography. Even if they don't come in with a theme, I always ask, what do you want your wedding photos to feel like? Because that emotional core guides everything. From mood board to map, finding the right location. Once the concept starts to solidify, the next step is finding the right setting. For Boho Cowgirl, I wanted something rural, but not overdone, a place that felt organic and untamed. After some location scouting, I found the perfect spot just outside of Albany, New York. It was this wide open field with gently rolling hills, some split rail fencing, and this gorgeous natural light in the late afternoon. It had just the right amount of space and visual interest, but it did not steal the show. It framed the story. Location is a critical piece of the puzzle in any shoot. It sets the tone and anchors the style. And in wedding photography, the ability to scout a location and envision its potential, no matter what the weather, the lighting, or the chaos of the day, is a superpower. I often visit venues ahead of time, walking through the space as if I were telling a story there. Where will the sun be during golden hour? What hidden spots might make great photography backdrops? Where can I capture intimate moments away from the crowd? And when you approach both editorial and wedding shots this way, you're not just documenting, you're curating an experience. Styling and wardrobe, building the visual language. With the location secure, the next step was wardrobe. This is where the concept comes alive. I worked with a model to create outfits that embodied the theme, Boho pieces like gauzy dresses, suede boots, denim, fringe jackets, and wide-brimmed hats. We leaned into natural tones, caramel, cream, faded blues, and textures that caught the wind and the light. What I love about styling is that it becomes part of the storytelling. The right outfit doesn't just look good, it contributes to the mood. Is the character strong and grounded, light and carefree, mysterious and cinematic? We pulled multiple looks for the day, keeping them within the same tonal family so everything felt cohesive. Even accessories were carefully chosen to add personality without overwhelming the image. This styling mindset absolutely translates into wedding photography. When I'm photographing a wedding, I'm not just documenting the dress or the tux. I'm looking at how the wardrobe plays against the landscape, how it moves with the subject, how it reflects the energy of the couple. Styling is more than fashion, it's visual storytelling. Shoot day. Structure and spontaneity. The day of the shoot is where planning and instinct collide. I always come with a loose shot list, a mental map of key images I want to capture, but I never let that get in the way of spontaneity. We shot the Boho Cowgirl series in warm, golden sunlight. The light was absolutely perfect, warm, low, and full of life. The model was amazing and totally in tune with the energy of the shoot. We moved between scenes, leaning on fences, walking through the field, tossing hats into the air, laying on the grass. It was fluid and creative. That's the beauty of photography. You plan so you can let go. You prepare so you're free to improvise. This is especially true in weddings. You've got timelines, lists, family portraits, and 100 moving parts. But the real magic comes when you follow the emotion of the day. Maybe the best photo happens when the bride is lacing her boots, or the groom is laughing with his grandmother before the ceremony. The camera needs to be ready, but more importantly, the photographer needs to be ready to see it. Editing, honoring the mood. Once the shoot wraps, the journey isn't over. In fact, editing is where the story gets its final polish. For Boho Cowgirl, I leaned into warm tones, soft shadows, and slightly vintage grading. I wanted the final images to feel sun-kissed, earthy, and timeless. Editing isn't just about fixing what's wrong, it's about amplifying what's right. And in wedding photography, post-processing is just as important. Every couple's gallery should reflect their day and their energy. I tailor my editing to bring out the emotion, the color palette, and the visual identity of each celebration. I don't believe in one-size-fits-all presets. Every story deserves its own treatment. From editorial to everyday, how this applies to weddings. Here's the big connection I want to make today. This entire creative process, from vision to frame, isn't limited to stylized shoots or magazine spreads. It applies directly to weddings, engagements, and all kinds of portrait work. Why? Because weddings are real-life stories told in real time. But just like a fashion editorial, they're full of themes, tones, emotions, wardrobe, setting, and character. As a wedding photographer, I'm not just capturing events, I'm telling a love story. And my background in building creative concepts helps me elevate those stories beyond the expected. I often draw on lessons from editorial work, like understanding how light shapes the mood, how color and texture guide the eye, and how to direct without overposing. These tools let me photograph weddings not just with technical skill, but with creative heart. So whether it's a rustic barn wedding, an elegant city celebration, or a mountaintop elopement, I approach it like a visual essay. And that all begins with the question, what do we want this story to feel like? Some closing thoughts. The journey matters. Creativity isn't a straight line. It loops, grows, backtracks, and surprises you. But whether you're working with a couple on their big day or planning an editorial shoot, the key is intention. From vision to frame, every decision should serve the story. And if you're a photographer listening to this, I encourage you to carve out space to create something just for yourself this season. Not for a client, not for Instagram, but just for the sake of a vision in your head. You'll be amazed at how it sharpens your skills, renews your passion, and makes you a better visual storyteller in every setting. And if you're a couple planning your wedding, I hope this gives you insight in how I work and what kind of care and creativity I bring to every shot. I'm not just showing up with a camera. I'm showing up with vision, preparation, and a deep respect for your story. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today. You can check out the Boho Cowgirl series on my Instagram or see more of my wedding work on my website. This has been Ken Clough for In Focus with Ken Clough Photography. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share the show with your friends. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep creating, and keep everything in focus.